I started to realize the fact that men don't want to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is not a masculine trait. So man to man, I don't need your vulnerability. I don't need you being susceptible to harm or to hurt, which is the standard definition associated with vulnerability. Man to man, here's what I need from you. I'm going to tell you the reason that I think men need to stop being vulnerable. And not just stop being vulnerable, stop pursuing vulnerability as an idea, like an aspirational idea. Like in the modern men's work movement, there's this concept that men need to be more vulnerable. And I understand the exact place that comes from. I understand the purpose of it. I understand the value in it. I understand like why it's important. I get all of the context. And to be honest, in my client conversations with the men that I've coached, for the 1,000 hours that I coached them over the history of my coaching business, I've actually showed them Brené Brown videos, and I've talked about vulnerability, and I've talked about all of these, all of the research and the content that she has produced and she has created. And it's been really, really powerful, and we've talked about vulnerability in many different contexts of conversation. And then I started to realize something. I started to realize the fact that men don't want to be vulnerable. Now, I understand you probably listen to it. You're like, okay, well, of course men don't want to be vulnerable. That's why we need to teach them vulnerability. And so here's the idea, is that we can put a square peg into a round hole, and we can try to keep putting a square peg into a round hole. But the reality is that at a certain point, we just realize that we're just putting the peg into the wrong hole. You're just putting the peg into the wrong hole. At a certain point, you go, yeah, we can fit the square peg in the round hole, and we're trying to fit the square peg in the round hole, but it's not working. It's not actually creating the result we're looking for it to create. It's ineffective. So ineffectiveness has to be measured at a certain point where you go, you know what, maybe this is really not the best approach. It's like trying to market an idea that's not really that marketable. You know what I'm saying? Like voting. They talk about voting all the time. Like, you need to go out and vote, and everybody needs to go out and vote. And the truth of the matter is that only, between 15 and 18% of people vote in local elections. And that's held standard for a very significant period of time. That may have been on the uptick. I checked that number in 2018 when my friend was running for mayor. But the bottom line is that it's a very low number of people that vote. And the marketing that goes into voting, I understand that it has some measure of effectiveness, but the reality is that by and large, it still doesn't necessarily create the ripple effect that they're looking for it to create. Here's my point. Vulnerability is not a masculine trait. It's not an aspirational masculine trait. It's not a trait that men aspire to be. Men don't go up, see a superhero and then look at Wolverine or Captain America and all these other things and say, man, this guy is so vulnerable. And so I think to myself, if vulnerability is not the thing, and the purpose of vulnerability, as Brené Brown describes, she talks about the idea that vulnerability is emotional courage. And because she's done an extensive amount of research on emotional courage, on what it means to be emotionally courageous. And so she's done an extensive amount of research, and she goes, oh, you know what? Well, we all need to be more vulnerable. We need to be more emotionally courageous. I understand that, but I want to flip the table for a second. Imagine if I went to Brené Brown and then I said, you know what, Brené, here's the idea. I've done an extensive amount of research on pregnancy, and I understand pregnancy better than you do. She'd be like, what? What are you talking about? You understand pregnancy better than me? How do you understand pregnancy better than me? I'm a woman that has kids. I'm a woman that has kids. How in the world would you ever understand pregnancy better than me, regardless of how much research you have done? And that's my point. My point is that Brené Brown has never had to bear the weight from the perspective of being a man who is trying to be the protector and the provider of his home. Brené Brown is not a man who is trying to understand his journey in life and to live into his mission and his purpose. Regardless of how much research she's done, the thing that's missing is the fact that vulnerability is not the aspirational quality that man who is going out and working 12 hours in a construction job and he's working all this other kind of stuff, he's not looking to be more vulnerable. But man to man, there is something that I do need from another man. And what I need from that man is not your vulnerability. So man to man, I don't need your vulnerability. I don't need your you being susceptible to harm or to hurt, which is the standard definition associated with vulnerability. So I don't need your vulnerability. And I don't need and I do need your courage, but I need it packaged in a different way. So let's get rid of the idea of being more vulnerable. Man to man, here's what I need from you. I need to know what's going on in you. I need to know what's happening. Look, if you're on an outpost and you're guarding a military base and you have been endowed with the ability to protect all of the troops in a base, then I need to know what's happening with you, what's happening inside of you. So I don't need your vulnerability. I need to know if you can do your job. And I need you to be honest. And I need you to be courageous in your honesty. I need your emotional transparency. I need you to be transparent, like in A Few Good Men, right? He's like, he goes and starts talking to Colonel Jessup. He's like, did you order the code red? He's like, you don't understand, Sergeant. He's like, did you order the code red? He's like, you're fucking right, I ordered the code red. He said, I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. Because that's what a lot of guys go. They go, you can't handle the truth. Is it that I can't handle the truth, or that you can't handle the truth, or that you don't even know what the truth actually is? I need your emotional transparency. Why? Because if I don't know what's going on with you, my brother, you are not an asset, you are a liability. I need to know what your emotional state is from a place of dignity. I need to know if you're afraid. I need to know if you're scared. I need to know if you're surprised. I need to know what's happening with you. But here's the thing. It's not just that I need to know, it's that you need to know. So here's the idea. When you get in contact with who you are and what's happening within you, the first stage is that you have to be aware, and I don't like calling it emotional intelligence because that makes it seem like you need to be intelligent. You just need to know what the core emotions are. You need to know what actual sadness looks like and what fear looks like. And you need to understand that when you are able to admit it with a certain level of acuity, it's actually an admirable trait. Like, I'm afraid that if my son doesn't understand how to be more effective and to be able to protect himself, that brings me fear. If he doesn't understand how to protect himself out in the world. So what it does is it indicates to me that what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put forth my best effort to ensure that I put him in an environment so he knows how to protect himself. But the idea of him being susceptible to harm makes me afraid. For sure it does. Absolutely. I understand that when I perceive something that my wife does and she doesn't hold herself with a certain measure of accountability, I understand that makes me angry. It doesn't make me frustrated. A lot of guys go, I'm frustrated, I'm not really angry, because their belief is that if I'm angry, then that means that I'm violent. Here's the idea. I want your emotional transparency without volatility. I need you to be able to communicate your emotional state with temperance. It's like, oh no, I'm angry. I'm sad right now. I'm actually sad right now, and I'm frustrated. And I understand that these emotional states are happening in me, and what they're doing is they're trying to teach me something about me. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sit with these emotions, but I wanna be transparent with you because I wanna give you the truth. And here's the thing, the truth is a masculine quality because it penetrates, it pierces. Guys want the truth. They wanna know if I can trust you. And if I can trust you, then you are an asset. And being an asset makes you useful. And being useful is a masculine quality. It's an aspirational quality. Every man wants to be of use, self-included. But he's not fighting for vulnerability. What he's doing is he actually wants to be of use. And I'm telling you, I told somebody on the phone the other day, I said, look, dude, I'm gonna tell you something, man. I don't feel like I can access you. I was talking to a client the other day, I said, I don't feel like I can access you. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, I come with a lot of joy and a lot of love and everything like that. I said, yeah. I said, I hear you on that. I hear the joy. I hear the love. And here's the deal. Whenever I run into people who only experience joy and love, it makes me nervous. I don't know. You may run into a lot of other people who only want your joy and love, but I want everything. I want the whole pizza pie. I want to know when you're angry because I can handle it. I want to know when you're sad. I can handle that. And not only do I want to know when you're sad, I would like to know what your emotional state is, but I would also like you to know that after you figure out how to be aware of what your emotional state is, that your emotional state needs a trajectory. It needs a place to go. Your emotions are not just you identifying your current state. That's what currently happens with men. They just go, this is my current status. Tap out. I'm sad. Got it. Okay, I hear that you're sad. What is the sadness trying to teach you about you? It's trying to teach you something. Your body, emotions happen in your body, so your emotions are trying to guide you to some sort of wisdom. And what's happening is that when you sink into your emotional state, you don't allow the wisdom to emerge, because the wisdom is then teaching you how to either set a boundary, how to address a need, want, or desire that has not been met, how to actually present what it is that you want to the world, how to be in your full expression. That's what your emotions are trying to teach you. And so I support and believe, and I'm grateful for the women that have taught this movement around vulnerability for men. But I'm telling you, from a man to another man, that I don't want your vulnerability in that way. Is there a possibility that you could be hurt by something that's said or something that you experience? Absolutely. So vulnerability is something that you just own. You just own that there's a possibility that I could be hurt associated with the way that I experience this. But the aspirational quality that I'm looking for from a guy as he's stepping into his leadership is the truth. I want the truth. And if you go, you can't handle the truth, that's not about me, my brother. That's about you. If you don't think that I can handle the truth, I think that you get to look at whether or not you can handle the truth. I want you to express what needs to be expressed. I want to hear what needs to be spoken. I want you to be aware of what your emotional state is. 6 core emotions: joy, love, anger, sadness, fear, surprise. In some schools of thought, there's another set of emotions that's like sexual feelings or creativity. And I believe that sexual feelings, love, creativity is like the place where everything emerges from. But you need to understand what your emotional state is, what is happening in you, and where it's happening in your body. And then what the wisdom is that it's trying to teach you, and the trajectory where it's trying to guide you. Because your emotions are trying to guide you into a place, but it needs to be handled from a grounded place. Not your volatility, temperance. It needs to be tempered, grounded. It needs to come from a place where you can communicate it to me literally the way that I'm talking to you right now. And if that is the place of vulnerability, the place of expression that you want to come from, it doesn't have to be vulnerability. Transparency now becomes your superpower, because you can tell anyone the truth. And when you can look at your woman and you can tell her the truth from a grounded place, all of a sudden you elicit her admiration and respect. And wouldn't any guy want to have the admiration and respect of the woman that he's calling his wife or his girlfriend or his partner? Because if that's the man that you want to be, this is the pathway. I don't believe that men need to be more vulnerable. I don't want your vulnerability, brother. I want your transparency. I want the truth. You tell me what's going on, and then we can build a trajectory from there.